Hey, Michael Sloniker here. This is my recording for the ID 212 PowerPoint presentation assignment. Let me share my screen real quick and we'll get started here. All right, so for my capstone project, I've chosen to do the topic of Christian leadership, specifically looking at Christian leadership, management, and business ethics in relation to what the gospel teaches us and what we see in the life of Jesus. Topic and rationale for my topic, Christian leadership. And here's my rationale. I chose this topic due to my passion and experience for it. Over the last 8 years, I've developed and demonstrated both management and leadership abilities in a variety of camps, trainings, programs, and in my jobs. In my ministry work specifically, I've identified a need for formal training and understanding of the requirements and the basics of Christian leadership, management, and morals. I attribute this mostly to the fact that many Christian ministry workers focus primarily, as they should, on biblical understanding and education, but then they fail to pursue formal leadership training and education. Here's my needs assessment. My identified problem was that Christian leaders and lay people pursue biblical knowledge in their lives, including seminary or Bible college, to learn theology, but then they fail to look to the Bible also as a source of leadership guidance and teaching. The current performance is that Christian leaders and lay people don't understand or pursue the biblical qualifications for leadership. They don't understand what the difference is between Christian and non-Christian leadership, and they often fail to learn and apply leadership skills and traits from the life of Christ. The learning gap is the lack of biblical leadership knowledge. The desired performance is that Christian leaders and lay people actively pursue, understand, and apply leadership knowledge from the Bible and from the life of Christ. This is the instructional goal. Students will learn about the basics of leadership, including differentiating between leadership and Christian leadership, understanding leadership from a biblical perspective, looking to the life of Christ, and ethical considerations, and several acronyms to help with retaining the information. Here's my instructional analysis. I'll just try to summarize it here a little bit. The constraints on design resources, really the only ones I can think of were a lack of funding, which isn't really a concern because all the programs and technologies that I'll talk about later are free. And I also talked about a physical communication and contact limitation with COVID-19 guidelines. Characteristics of the learning environment, it's going to be taught in an online setting using Zoom and PowerPoint. I'll talk about the more technologies later. Most of the information will be taught through a 1-hour lecture. That'll be taught on Zoom in a verbal lecture style. I'll use visual aids. I'll provide a study guide through Quizlet, as well as a handout of all of the information for students to look at. I'll also talk here a little bit about mobility concerns, about different concerns for mobility, for hearing, for vision impairment, any of these things. I'll have a recording for students to use that'll have subtitles on YouTube. They have the handouts if they need those for any reason. I'll also be able to have students contact me through email so they can communicate with me in or outside of the course. Let's see. And obviously I talked about required skills here a little bit later, but I also put the characteristics of learning environment. Students will need to have access to a computer, internet, all the necessary tools to use Zoom, and of course, email. Characteristics of learners, they'll be Christians, preferably Christians who are going into the ministry or are already actively engaged in the ministry. There will be time for questions and comments, as I put here. And I'll also make time for that one-on-one instruction, like I said earlier, the communication through email in or outside of the 1-hour course time. I also said that I may need to accommodate for any lack of computer skills. And that would be on an individual basis. Skills and knowledge required. I already talked about how they'll need to have good computer skills. They'll need to know how to use a computer as well as the internet. They'll need to have good studying and test taking skills. I can't teach that myself in a 1-hour course. So that's that's a given. They also need to be able to use Quizlet. They need to use the internet. They need to be able to use the tools provided. I'm not using anything super advanced. Zoom, where most all of us are familiar with through COVID, and Most of us should be familiar with how to use Microsoft Word, and I may just need to provide a little bit of clarity for some people, but there shouldn't be a big technical barrier for this course. Course order, it'll be shown, or I'll show it here in a minute, the instructional objectives, it'll be taught in that same order. Required skills, they'll need to know the English language. I speak English. I'll have English subtitles in the video should they need access to that. They'll need to have access to a computer or a smartphone, something to use Zoom on, something to get Microsoft Word, Spotify. I talk about Spotify in the instruction, PowerPoint, Google Drive, and email, all that stuff. Also with Zoom, learners need to have access to a microphone and to a camera, and a good one, so you can actually understand and see them. They'll need to be adaptable and dependable to learn and adopt new strategies and knowledge. They can't just take this information, forget it. They need to actually retain it. And they'll need to be able to focus and process the lesson materials and instruction exam. A lot of people can't struggle with focusing on an online setting. So up front, I'll tell students, hey, this is an online course. So there will be challenges that come with that. And it takes a lot more, I guess, self-motivation and self-control and time management skills than more so than learning in seat. Instructional objectives. Students will be able to define and contrast leadership and Christian leadership. They'll need to define discipleship and explain how to go about discipling others. They need to explain using an acronym the 14 general characteristics of a good leader. Explain using an acronym the 3 general characteristics of a good Christian leader. Describe Jesus' example of perfect Christian leadership, and explain the qualifications of leadership. Assessment plan. The big 3 instructional objectives out of those 6, I believe it was. Yeah, out of those 6 or 7. Number 1, define and contrast leadership and Christian leadership. Students will demonstrate learning by receiving a C or higher on a multiple choice test, covering the definitions and terms used. Number 2, explain using an acronym the altogether 17 general characteristics of a good Christian leader. Students will demonstrate learning by receiving a C or higher on several fill-in-the-blank questions over the 17 Christian leadership characteristics. And number 3, they need to describe Jesus' example of perfect Christian leadership. Students will demonstrate learning by receiving a C or higher on a short response paper on how we as Christian leaders can learn from and apply Jesus' leadership. Now, with all 3 of these, they each have their own assessment, as I just read, but it's also important to know that I am providing a study guide through Quizlet, and I will have a handout in the form of a Word document with all the lesson materials that they could need to prepare for those tests. And these assessments will be at the end of the course. Instructional resources. First up, I'll be using OBS Studio for any recording needs. I could use Zoom, but OBS is something that I'm more used to, and I can be a little bit more precise with what I want to show on the screen and how to organize all that. I'm going to use Quizlet as a study guide tool. I've already created the Quizlet on here. Adobe Captivate for course design. With Adobe Captivate, I was doing research as far as these different authoring tools. And I saw that Adobe Captivate allowed me to take existing PowerPoints and implement them into that. And so that's what I did. I already had a PowerPoint set for this lesson. So it's just really easy to switch it over to Adobe Captivate. I'm going to use Microsoft Word for making handouts and tests. And I already talked about that. Zoom for the main method of communication. And lastly, SurveyMonkey for the end of course evaluation, which we'll see here. Upon completing the course, students will be directed to fill out this 9-question survey on SurveyMonkey. And that's a free site. So I think I covered all my bases with the 9 questions, and then if they give any feedback on that, I'll be able to view that and I guess redesign appropriately. And conclusion, topic is Christian leadership. My main 3 objectives: define and contrast leadership and Christian leadership, explain using an acronym the altogether 17 general characteristics of a good Christian leader, and describe Jesus' example of a perfect Christian leader. Rationale: to prepare and teach current and future ministry workers how, as a Christian, to properly lead, manage, and interact in the workplace based on the life of Jesus. And some small comments here. This will be an online course using multiple technologies and tools. I'll have a study guide and individual communications available. I'll have an assessment for each main objective with 3 total. Those will be at the end of the course. I'll have an end of course evaluation once students have completed those assessments. And I've already taken into consideration all the copyright and accessibility concerns. This is my capstone project on Christian leadership. Thanks for watching. Bye.